right. Well, welcome everybody. Appreciate you being here. We'll give a minute or two for folks to pile in, and then we'll get started. And I think this is part three of the series with Amplify, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm excited to be in here, being a part of it. I think Logan did the first two, if I'm not mistaken, and big fan of Amplify Louisville here in the community. Great catalyst of entrepreneurship here. So yeah. While folks are kind of spilling in, be kind of a lecture-based talk. I'll be doing most of the talking, I guess. But if you have any questions, any comments as we go, please do use the chat. We got the chat, we got the Q&A feature, so you can throw it in there. Michael will be monitoring that, so we'll make sure we get questions answered. Because this is for you guys. We do this talk so that we can provide some value, and a lot of that value comes from answering questions that you have. It's about what you care about, not what we think is important. So yeah, throw anything in there as we go, and Michael will help kind of flag it up and throw it my way, and hopefully we can give you a good answer. So all right, let's get started. So let me share my screen here and we will launch it out. So pull up my deck here. Okay. So today we are closing out a three-part series, and for anybody that has been following along, we've talked about how to build a great financial model and why you need one. We've talked about how to leverage a model in a fundraising process, and today we're gonna focus on what I actually believe is by far the most important aspect of a financial model, which is how to use one to supercharge your business, how to use one to stay financially healthy, how to use one to hit your growth targets, to not run out of cash, right? That's really where the lion's share of the value in a financial model is. And we're going to zoom into, okay, so we've got a model. How do we use it to run our business? How do we use it to improve our chances of success? And I'm very honored to be here in front of you guys talking about this topic. It's a topic that's very near and dear to me. And who am I, right? Who am I and what gives me the right? Well, I am Stephen Plappert. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Forecaster. So if you've been along with this series, I think you've seen my co-founder Logan, who's awesome. But I'm from Louisville, Kentucky. I've started a couple different tech companies, one called Fantasy Hub back in 2013. Ran that company for 3 years and took it through Techstars down in Austin, and unfortunately failed it in 2016. And then I spent the next 4 years of my life building financial models for early stage companies. I built hundreds of financial models for early stage startups outside of a 6-month hiatus, which I used to hike the Appalachian Trail from Georgia to Maine and live like a hobo in the woods for 6 months. But other than that, built a lot of models, and learned a lot. I learned a lot, and that was the impetus behind building Forecaster. Was Logan and I working together, building all these models, thinking, hey, there's got to be a better way. So we've built Forecaster, and have been blessed to have a decent amount of success with that so far. We've got a little bit over $1 million in annual revenue. We've got a little bit over 500 startups using the platform, and very thrilled about that. But I'm a founder. I'm a finance guy. So this is my wheelhouse. This of any topic, this is probably the one I can speak to the most. So hopefully I can add some value. And for anybody that's not aware, and apologies for folks that are abundantly aware, Forecaster is an online financial model. So it's an alternative to Microsoft Excel when it comes to building and managing a financial model for your business. As the founder and CEO of that business, I think it's awesome. I think everybody should use Forecaster. Of course, I would say that. But it really is a cool product, and we put a lot of expert human support behind it. It's not just a software platform. It's a bunch of awesome humans that work with you hand in hand to build your model, to coach you on how to use it, to make sure you can confidently present with investors. And so we put a lot of love into the business and to all of our customers. So anybody that is interested, we'd absolutely love to work with you. And Michael can throw a link in the chat, which will help you get in touch with us if you think that Forecaster could be a fit for you. If you're based in Kentucky, you get 50% off. So that's pretty cool. We like to support our brothers and sisters here in the bluegrass. But no matter what, we'll get you a good deal. We'll work with you. But not a sales pitch. Not here to pitch you on my company. Not here to get you to buy Forecaster. I'm here to try to add some value, to try to kind of help you hit your growth targets, not run out of cash, and use the financial model to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to quickly just kind of review what is a great financial model, and then we're going to say, okay, well, how do we use that model to supercharge our business? Like, how do we use that model to get on the offensive, to hit our growth targets? Then we're going to say, okay, well, how do we use the model to avoid running out of cash? How do we use it when we're on the defensive, right? How do we use it to make sure that we don't fail, essentially? And then once we go through those, we're going to kind of get out of the classroom. We're going to get into the real world, so to speak, right? We're going to zoom into my business, right? I run a business. It's called Forecaster, and we use a financial model, obviously, to run that business. So I'm going to show you exactly what we do every month. I'm going to show you exactly how we use our financial model to make sure we hit our growth targets, to make sure we don't run out of cash. And I think that in showing you what we do, I think you could get a really good idea of what you could do to achieve similar results. So that's what we're going to do here today. So we're starting out with just saying, okay, well, pretty simple question. What is a financial model? And for those that have been following along, you may recall, but it's a business simulator. We really like this idea of considering a model a business simulator. Its job is to simulate your business into the future with the goal of taking your business on a virtual test track, right? We're trying to see, hey, how might this business perform in the future? Why are we doing that? Well, we have to make a lot of decisions today that affect the future, right? Like, I'm running a company right now that has 26 employees. We're hiring for 4 people right now. That's a decision that I have to make today. I have to say, hey, Michael, we need a marketing coordinator. Let's hire that person. And then that's going to affect the next few years, right? That person is now, we're paying that person a salary and they're a cost, and that's going to affect the future. That's going to affect our profit. That's going to affect our margin. Like, that's a decision that affects the future. Hiring affects the future. So does fundraising. When am I going to raise money? How much am I going to raise? That's a decision I have to make today that'll affect the future. I'm gearing up for an $8 million Series A right now. Or what about growth channels? What growth channels are we going to invest in? I have to decide that today, but it affects the future. And so we really want to simulate the future with the idea of trying to see, okay, how are the decisions that I have to make today affecting the future? And what does that tell me about my path to success? What does that tell me about my runway? And how can I use that information to make better decisions? So that's the whole kit and caboodle here. So why do we use a model? It's really 3 kind of reasons. There's a myriad of others, but these are the best 3 in my opinion, especially for early stage companies. And that's to hit your growth targets, to get the big win, to maintain healthy runway, make sure you don't run out of cash, and then to raise capital. It's a very powerful storytelling tool. Models go over very, very well with investors. But today we're not going to talk about the raising capital piece. Today we're going to focus on these first 2. How do we use it offensively to hit our goals? How do we use it defensively to make sure we don't run out of cash? That's really what we're going to dig into here today. So we'll talk about the fun piece first, right? How do we supercharge? How do we go faster? How do we do better? How do we hit our goals, right? That's we all want that, right? I think. What we call is we call it the monthly finance playbook. That's what we call this process, this system, this playbook, right? That we're going to run every month to make sure that we take the most linear path to success, the most direct path from point A to point B, from our current state to our goal state. It's going to be what we call the monthly finance playbook. So let's see what this is all about. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to set targets. We can't possibly hit targets if we don't set targets, right? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use the financial model that we've built. We're going to kind of turn the knobs and levers, right? We're going to change the inputs. We're going to say, hey, here's what top of funnel looks like. Here's what conversion looks like. Here's what price looks like. Here's what retention looks like. What does that say? Well, that says, here's our customer forecast, here's our revenue forecast, here's our hiring plan, here's our expense budget, here's our cash, right? It's setting targets for the company. Go out, in perpetuity, really. But like, I like to focus on the next like 6, 12, 18 months. Make sure you got good targets set for kind of the next little bit here, right? So you're going to set those targets. Once you've set the targets, which should be, attractive but reasonable, right? They should represent you hitting your goals before you run out of cash, but be goals that you think you can hit. You should just forget about the model. Just forget about the model, put it on a shelf. Don't worry about it. Just go run the business, right? Execute the plan, run the business, sell the customers, build the product, talk to investors, right? Hire people, do all the stuff you got to do to run the business. While you're running the business, you should have a system for tracking your most important metrics. Like, there's all sorts of metrics that are important for your business that feed into the financial model. Accounting metrics like revenue and expenses and cash, sales and marketing metrics like top of funnel and conversion. Revenue and billing metrics, price, retention or churn rate or average transaction value, that kind of stuff. Metrics around your head count or your expenses, right? All these metrics. And so you want to make sure you're tracking those metrics. Some of them may be tracked in your accounting platform like QuickBooks, some in your CRM like HubSpot or Salesforce. Some may just be tracked in a spreadsheet somewhere, right? But you want to make sure you're tracking those metrics, because at the end of the month, it's very important that you, kind of bring those growth targets back up in front of you and say, okay, this is what I said I was going to do this month. This is what I actually did, right? Which comes from the metric tracking. These were my actual results. And you want to analyze those results, If you hit some of those targets, maybe you hit your customer and revenue goal. Like, that's awesome. Like, you should celebrate that with your team, with your community, with your investors, right? You should put that in your investor update. That's a big win. Even more importantly, what did you not hit? Did you miss your conversion goal? Did you did you miss your budget, on the hiring side, right? Or what did you miss, and why? Like, is it something that you need to take into account? Was it just an anomaly? Someone went on vacation, so you didn't hit your numbers? Or was it something that's more systemic, as something that's a trend, and you need to tweak the model because it's not accurate anymore? Like, you have to use the model as a forcing function to hold yourself accountable in this way. And once you've analyzed those results and you've got kind of some opinions, then you're going to tweak the model. You're going to look at the model again, and you're going to say, okay, well, now we're in this month, and then we're going forward. Does my customer and revenue still look reasonable? Is my hiring plan still accurate? Does my expense budget still feel conservative, right? You're going through that, and you're tweaking the model as applicable. Now, if you're hitting all your goals, you may not tweak at all. If you're missing all your goals, you may scrap the model and start over. Probably not, but you may change it a lot. So it just kind of depends, but it's very important that you run this process, because if you don't, your business is going to go like this, and your model is just going to go, like, your model is just going to diverge from reality, and it's not going to be useful. You're not going to be able to use it to figure out, are you on track to hit your goals, or when are you going to run out of money? Because you got to start the fundraising process at least 6 to 9 months before that. When's that fume date? You're not going to know that if you don't keep your model tuned to reality, and this playbook is how you do that. And when you're setting aggressive growth targets, like if we're setting targets like this, right? Like, let's say we're gearing up for a seed round, we want to get to 10K in MRR. That's not just going to happen, right? Like, there's a lot of hard work that's got to go into getting to that goal. And we need to manage to that. We need to say, okay, how many customers do we need to sell every month? What conversion rate do we hit? How many leads do we need to generate? What price point, right? Like, what are the metrics that we need to hit in order to hit that goal? And how can we just maniacally focus on that, really manage the hell out of that month to month to make sure we hit those goals? Because if we don't, we're at a supreme risk of failure. And as someone who's failed a business, my first business failed, it hurts. It really does. It sucks. Like, you really, really don't want to do that. And so anything you can do to avoid that, in my opinion, you should do, because it's not a fun experience. So keep in tune to these growth targets like this. And then, you'll set a target, like, you'll manage to it. You'll get to that point. You'll raise the seed round. You're pumped. Process, unfortunately, it doesn't stop, right? It just keeps rolling. You've got the seed round in hand. You've got another 2 years of runway. Now you've got to hit goals for hitting your Series A. So you've got to set the same same process, set the goals, run the process, execute the business, track the metrics, analyze the results, tweak the model, run that on a monthly basis. Now, if you're out there and maybe you're not fundraising, maybe you're a cash flowing business, whatever it is, you may not have the fundraising milestones, but your growth goals are going to be no different. You're going to say, okay, well, where do I want to be in 6 months? Where do I want to be in 12 months? And you're just going to run that process and make sure that like you're hitting those goals and you're staying in a healthy position financially. So that's the playbook that we suggest that you run. Now, if we're running that playbook, how does that help us avoid running out of cash, right? Like, what is that going to do that's going to allow us to avoid this nightmarish scenario that no one wants to be in? Well, it all comes down to what's called runway. Some of you may already know, runway is a familiar term, but it's the number of months until you run out of money. So, right, if like if in 9 months I run out of money, my runway is 9 months. And so what the playbook's going to do is it's going to keep your model anchored to reality. And if your model's anchored to reality, it's going to produce a runway stat. It's going to tell you when you run out of money. Like, you're going to look at the cash and you'll see it going down and eventually hitting zero. So like you'll be able to, receive that information. You say, okay, well, my model is now up to date. I have my plan represented and I'm out of money in 9 months, 12 months, 6 months, whatever. So you're going to take in that information. Now, what you're going to do to help avoid running out of cash is you're going to then process that information. And here's how we suggest that you process it. If you get the read back from the model and the model says, hey, you've got more than 12 months worth of runway. In my opinion, unless like something else is big is going on that would change, the dynamic there, you don't have a lot of cause for concern. You've got plenty of runway. You should stay the course. You should make sure that like you're going to hit your growth targets before you run out of runway. That's what the playbook's for, is to tweak that model to say, hey, I'm going to hit these targets before the cliff, right? But as long as you have a plan to get there, you should stay the course, right? There's no need to freak out or do anything, about it. You say, okay, cool. I got more than 12 months with a runway. Great. I'm good to go. Once your runway falls beneath 12 months, it's in that 6 to 12 month range. I think, your ears should perk up a little bit. I think you should say, okay, we're starting to get into an uncomfortable range here. We have less than a year. Like, we need to have line of sight on a material change for the business, either raising capital or reaching profitability within that time period. If we can't do that, we might start to get into trouble. So, I would start to really look critical at that growth, those growth targets. Are you going to hit those numbers in time? If not, you may need to make adjustments. You may need to go get some money from current investors. You may need to chop some people so that you can extend that runway, right? But you're going to have those conversations, and knowing your runway is what's going to bring those conversations to the surface, right? It's going to force you to have those conversations, make those decisions today that are going to affect the future. And if you do believe, hey, I'm on track for the growth target, stuff like that, this is the time, 6 to 12 months with the runway, that you should be planning for that next round. You should really start to plan for the next round. You should start to get your narrative together, make sure you got an investor pipeline, get your model, all polished up, right? You should be planning to raise capital because it takes time to prep. And then if you get less than 6 months of runway, like, you're in the danger zone. You're in the danger zone. You should be actively raising your next round, or if you're not fundraising, you either need to start fundraising or you should be immediately taking other action to extend your runway. Unless you have a very good reason that you're going to be profitable or something like that in a few months, right? It's like you're at risk of failure. So you want to make sure that you're either fundraising, immediately start fundraising, or have some kind of other plan in place. But the good news is, if you're using a model the way you should be, that's never going to sneak up on you. You're never just going to wake up one day and you're like, oh crap, I all of a sudden have 3 months worth of runway. Right? You're going to see it coming. Like, if you raise some money, maybe you got 12 months of the runway, it's going to go like 12, 11, 10, maybe another 10 because you had a great month, right? So 10, 12, 11, 10, 10, 9, 8, 9, 8, 6, right? It's like you're going to see it come down, and you're going to be able to see it from a mile away, and you're going to be able to plan for it, and you're going to be able to avoid the cliff, to jump over it, right? And so, and that's the whole idea of avoiding running out of cash, is like, you should be reading when that's going to happen, and you should be making decisions to avoid it before it happens, right? It's like seeing a pothole in the road. If you see it like when it's right in front of your car, you're probably just going to smash into it, right? If you see it when it's like a mile away, you're just going to go, you're just going to just curve around it. It's not going to be a big deal, right? It's the same thing with cash on this side. Now, that's really the base of it. Like, you know, as simple or as complex as that is, whatever, like that's the heart of it. One kind of thing for bonus points here you can do, and then we're going to jump into my example, is you can do what we call scenarios. What if scenarios, we call them. So your base case scenario would be the forecast that's coming out of your model right now, right? You've got a model, you've set your growth targets. That's your base case. That's otherwise called like your operating case. That's what you think is going to happen, right? That's what you're planning on. That's what you're making decisions on, is that base case. Now, what you can do in modeling, and we make this really easy in Forecaster, is you can clone that model. And then you can say, well, what happens if we crush it? Like, what happens if we get a big partner? What happens if we, you know, really beat our goals? Who would we hire? What would we do? What does that look like? You know, so that could be a scenario that you run, you know, to see, could we get more aggressive? You might run a scenario and say, you know what? I'm thinking that we could go faster if we hired more salespeople. What does that look like? If we hired some more salespeople and they had this much efficiency, could their revenue generation outpace the expense of hiring those people? Could it be a net cash flow positive? I don't know. Let's clone the model and model it out as a scenario. You know, and then by far, I think the most important scenario that everybody should run is like, what happens if things don't go well, right? Like, what happens if we miss our revenue forecast by a significant amount? Like, I think we're going to hit these targets, but what if we get half of that? Like, what does that do to our runway? What does that do to our prospects of raising capital? What does that do to our ability to grow the company? Like, what's the deal there? And can we survive? Can we make it through that, right? Do we have a plan B, right? And that's really, really important, because a model is just a model, right? It's not a crystal ball. It doesn't tell you what the future is going to hold. It's just an idea as to what the future could be. And right, we live in a multiverse, right? There's a million different things it could be. And so like, exploring some of those alternate realities for the business and making sure you've got an action plan for those is a really nice thing to do. It's not something you need to do. It's not something you may have the time or appetite to do. But if you got the time, if you got the appetite, it's a good bonus. It's something that's worthwhile to do. So, okay, that's it. I mean, that's the content here. And now what we're going to do is going to flip over and say, okay, well, let's see it in action. Let's see, what does that look like in a real business? Like, we're a real business. We've been running for 3 years now. We got over $1 million in revenue. We got over 500 companies using it. We got 26 employees. We're a nice little business. And I like to think that we do this stuff as good as anybody, and we better, because this is our whole business. So let's take a look at what we do here. So first thing I'm going to show is our financial model. So I'm going to jump over here into assumptions. I'm going to look at this on a monthly basis. I'm going to start it at Q2 2022, and I'm going to go out 48 months just to give us a good time here. So give you guys a quick little orientation for anybody who has never seen Forecaster before, just so you know what you're looking at, because this is what we use to manage the model. You've got assumptions and financials. That's kind of input output. So you've got the assumptions side. This is where the model is built and managed. So we've got every aspect of the business. We've got customer acquisition. These would be the channels that we use to acquire customers. This data in gray is historical data. This is actual data. This is how many customers we've got in each month by channel. And then we've got our forecasted data. Everything in white here is a forecast. This is our prediction. These are our growth targets, right? We want to acquire 39 customers in May of 2024 from other strategic networks. That's an example, right? So we've got these growth targets. And those growth targets go all the way down the business, like we talked about. We've got customer acquisition. We've got revenue streams. So we've got annual subscriptions. We've got monthly support subscriptions. We've got historical revenue. We've got revenue milestones. We want to get to 100K in MRR by the end of the year. We want to get to 150K in MRR by May of next year. These are milestones. These are growth targets. Also on the people side, we've got a hiring plan in here. I mentioned that we're hiring a marketing coordinator. Here they are right here. We're hiring these marketing coordinators. We're trying to get them here in November. Honestly, it might not happen, so we may push that out to December. But like, so this is the process, right? We've got this hiring plan, and we've got this model, and what it all spits out is a set of financials, income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow statement that goes monthly out the next 5 years, and I can look at it quarterly or annually as well. So this is our model. This is Forecaster, and when we run the playbook, right? So Logan and I, my co-founder and I, we sit down every month and we start in the model, right? This is the first thing we do is we start in the model and we set these growth targets. So what we do is we go from the business top to bottom and we say, okay, customer acquisition. The first thing we do is we scroll down and we look at total customer acquisition. And we say, okay, we're assuming that in November, we just did this. We're going to hire 52 new customers, or sorry, hire 50 new acquire 52 new customers, then 54, 58, 63, 66, 69. Okay. If I scroll out to the end of 2023, we're getting up to 116. So generally speaking, that's where we're trying to go. Now I look at what we've been doing, we've been kind of crushing it lately. We went from 35 to 43 to 52 to 63. That's great. So if I'm looking at this in the near term, Logan and I are looking at this saying, hey, like, this does not scare me at all. I think we're going to crush these numbers. If anything, I think we could significantly beat these numbers. But, like, we like to be conservative. We're finance guys. So we say, okay, like, yeah, like this doesn't scare us at all. I think this is a good forecast for the company. So we're going to move on. All right. This is the setting the forecast piece. Now, if we wanted to get more aggressive, we would look up and say, okay, well, which one of these numbers do we think is too small? Where do we think we're going to acquire more customers? Maybe we're going to grow faster on the strategic network side. It's been going up a lot. Maybe it's going to go up faster, right? Or maybe it's really the Google SEO because Michael's been crushing it on that side and we're going to grow faster there. Like, but where is it? We might ramp it up. If we felt a little insecure about it, we might ramp it down. So we go through that process. Once we gut check that, we're going to go over to revenue streams. We're going to say, okay, what's the deal on revenue? Now revenue, we're assuming a pretty big bump. We're assuming a small bump in support subscriptions. I think that's reasonable. Pretty big bump in annual subscriptions. We may open this up, say, do I think that that's reasonable? Yeah, we think we do. We grew 4K last month. We're going to do it again. Okay, I feel like that's good. So we'd say, okay, I like that. And then we're going to keep going down. We're going to go to the people. Like I mentioned, we may bump that marketing coordinator out, right? And we won't go through all that, but like we're just going through the model, right? And we're not doing a bunch of heavy analysis kind of stuff, right? We're just doing gut analysis, right? We're just looking at it and we're just saying, hey, does that still feel reasonable? Does that still help us hit our goals? Is that still accurate to the best of our knowledge? And if all those answers are yes, we're just going to keep moving. And then when we get to the end, we're then going to look in on it. We're going to say, okay, financials, there's how it goes. Like, let's look at runway because we're always concerned with that. We've got a couple $1 million coming in from current investors. So that's really going to help bump up our runway. Then we're looking to raise another $6 million, total $8 million Series A by the end of Q2. So that's going to bump our runway out a lot more. If we didn't raise that money, we'd be out of money, here in May. So we say, okay, like we really need to make sure that we get this 2 million. As long as we do, we're good. So we go through that kind of process. And then once we've set the forecast to our liking, like we've gotten comfortable with it, we then put it on a shelf, right? We put it on a shelf. We don't worry about it. We execute the plan. And then as the month's going on, we've got our metric tracking system. So I'll show you that. We've got a document we call metrics and OKRs that represents all our metrics and our objectives. And so if I just kind of scroll down here through this, you'll see we've got a lot of metrics. We've got KPIs. We've got a Series A scorecard with a lot of high-level metrics. We've got revenue and customer KPIs that we track. If I scroll down through that, we've got some engineering metrics. We've got some product metrics. We've got a lot of growth metrics. We've got all these channels, organic, search, webinar, networks, Techstars. Like we're tracking our funnels and our rates and everything like that for each one of these channels. And then we go all the way down to, metrics around onboarding, metrics around customer retention, metrics around, usage, right? We have all these metrics. So we're tracking those metrics. And like you can see here, they're pulled from different sources. This one's pulled from Google Analytics. This one's pulled from Analytics. This is pulled from Mixpanel, ChartMogul, right? Like we're pulling this in from different places and we're kind of aggregating them here. And a lot of these metrics then end up in our financial model. So if I go to this financial model, and this is the tracking the metrics and the analyzing the results piece. If I go here to customer acquisition and I open up strategic networks, you'll see that we've keyed these numbers in. We had actually 51 beta applications. We got 50 deals. We closed 19 new customers. We have 148 partnerships. Those are real numbers for the month of October. And we update our financial model with all this actual data so that we keep it grounded, so that we keep it anchored to reality. So we're going to update the model with all that data. And as we're updating it, we're going to ask ourselves what we hit and what we didn't. If we didn't hit the customer forecast, which in this case we crushed it, we would say, okay, well, why did we miss? Did we not generate enough leads? Did we not hit our conversion rate? What did we not hit? And same thing with revenue, same thing with people. We'd ask those questions as we're analyzing those results. Now, you can do this directly in your financial model, or like we also produce a report. So this is just our one from June. We produce a report like forecast versus actual. Did we hit our revenue? Did we hit our expenses? Oh, we went over. Why was that? Well, June was a 3 pay period month for us. What about like month over month changes? What's going on there? So like we do this report. We do this for our customers as well. Anybody that's on our analyst support package. So that's a really useful product. But we do this to just kind of make sure we understand, okay, like what's going on, and it helps Logan and I tune the model and keep it accurate. And then, once we get through all that, right? Like once we get through that and we've analyzed the results, then we loop back, right? We loop back to where we started and we go through the model top to bottom, and we ask ourselves, with this new data, what do we think about the forecast? What do we think about the customers? What do we think about the revenue, right? What do we think about the people? What does all that look like? And then what decisions do we need to make today in order to affect the future? Do we need to adjust the hiring plan? Do we need to adjust the expense budget? Well, I may go to financials. I may go to cash flow. I may scroll out and say, well, what we really need to do is get this $2 million. If we don't get this $2 million, we're going to run out of money relatively quickly. So that's going to be like priority number one for me, is close that deal. Assuming we get that, we're good. We can execute on the hiring plan as expected. Now, if November ends and something happens and that 2 million falls through, whatever, then I'm going to have to say, okay, well, now we're not going to get that. We need to bank on 8 million in Q2. That means that we need to peel back some of these hires. So I'm going to go to assumptions, and I'm going to go to the people side of the business, and I'm going to say, okay, well, what hires can we afford to wait on? I'm going to push some of those out, because we need to be more conservative with cash. So, it's all about decision making, looking at the model, looking at the financial realities of the business, and then making decisions based on that analysis and based on that insight, of like, what should you do from a fundraising perspective? What should you do from a hiring perspective? And then what are the goals? Right. The other big thing we use this for is when we run this process every month, now we have goals. I go to my growth manager, Mitch, and I'm like, hey, in November, we need to sell 52 new customers. That's the goal. Right. And so we can kind of orient ourselves around what we need to do now in order to hit our big goals, right? Because the big goal in the future, right, is zoomed out. By the end of next year, I want to be at 280,000 in MRR. That's really the goal. But in order to get to that goal, I need to get 52 new customers this month, and then 54, then 58, then 63. I got to do all this stuff month over month. And so we're really kind of managing to those growth targets, managing to those goals, keeping a very tight loop on it. So that way we make sure we take the most linear path. We don't kind of ping pong around on the Plinko board. We take kind of a more linear path to success. We de-risk the company. We bring down the chances of failure, and we sleep a little better at night as well. So that's really it. And so I don't want to just talk at you guys, too much. And it's that's it. That's the process. You run that process, you run that every month. I guarantee you, it's gonna increase the chances of success. It's gonna increase the chances that you achieve your goals. And once you get into the flow of doing it, it's really not that hard. It really doesn't take that much time. It takes a couple hours a month, honestly, maximum, to do this stuff. So we always suggest save time on your calendar every month. Put a 2-hour block on your calendar, leave it on your calendar every month at the same time, and just commit to spending those 2 hours in your financial model, updating it, just asking yourself the tough questions, right? Tweaking it, reviewing it, seeing what information comes from that, right? And then going out there, making decisions, running the business. So that's what we got. And just to kind of close it out here before we open it up for questions. And so if you got questions, please do throw them in the chat, throw them in the Q&A. We'd love to answer any questions that you have about modeling or fundraising or forecaster or whatever it is, whatever you need. But we also, we give this actually 50% off to any Kentucky-based companies. Say if you're not a Kentucky-based company, well, you should move to Kentucky and get 50% off. Otherwise, we'll give you 25% off. No big deal. But we do want to be, yeah, we want to work with awesome companies. You know, that's I think the coolest thing about what we do is we get the chance to work with a lot of great companies and great founders. And you know, Forecaster is an annual subscription. It's $2,000 a year. You get a big discount. And it comes with this white glove onboarding. We spend a lot of time with you in the first month with an analyst, helping you build a model, helping coach you on the monthly finance playbook, on presenting the model with investors, like the things that you need to have success in it. And then we're kind of with you every step of the way. We check in once a quarter with calls, and we just give a lot of human support, you know, over and above the platform. We think that's really important for folks. So, you know, just know that we do that. And yeah, with that, I'll leave it up for some questions, and we can spend the next 20 minutes answering questions, or if you guys don't have that many questions, then you know, then we'll let everybody get back to the day a little bit early. That's always nice. So yeah, thank you. Oh, looks like we got one question. Let's see. The amount of revenue entered for each month is total or cumulative. This would be it's the revenue for that month. So not total or cumulative. It would be the revenue for that month. So like for us in our model, you know, like when we say we're going to do $96,000 in revenue, it would be in the month of November. And then we would do an additional 105,000 in revenue in December and an additional 115,000 in January. It's not kind of adding up cumulatively, but rather it's the amount of revenue we do in each individual month. And then this total revenue is a sum of these different revenue streams. So like if I open this up, you know, we've got 58,000 in revenue that's coming from our software. And then if I open this up, we've got 13,000 in revenue that's coming from our analyst support. We've got 20,000 in revenue that's coming from our CFO services. And then we've got a little extra revenue here coming from some other services that we provide. So,
and if you wanted to see a cumulative number, Stephen, you could do that in the financials.
Yes, absolutely. And so if you did want to see a cumulative number, you know, you could look at things quarterly or annually, for example. Like if I were to look at things on an annual basis, you know, then this is a little bit more of a cumulative number. Like this is our cumulative revenue for the year of 2022, you know, and right now annual would be in Forecaster the biggest kind of bracket you could put on it. There's no way to look at like all-time revenue as a number, but you could look at annual revenue, which I think is really useful. So yeah. Let's see, what else we got? Okay, the difference between 105 and 96 is your next month revenue, right? So now I think in this case it would be like they're individual. So like the 96 is the amount of revenue we're doing in November. 105 is the amount of revenue in December. And so actually maybe it depends on what you meant by the question, but the delta there would be the amount of revenue growth we're getting over the next month. We're still getting the same 96,000 again because it's a subscription, but we are getting an additional, you know, 9. So it would be kind of like the month over month revenue growth would be that delta, you know. We'd get the full 105,000 in December, but if we were showing, hey, here's how much we're growing revenue month over month, it would be, you know, 8,000-9,000, you know, month over month, if that makes sense. Great questions. Any other questions? Yeah, let's see what we got. Oh, okay, good deal. Any other questions, guys? Other questions you have about modeling, you know, using a model to run your business, or you know, really anything at all before we move on with our days.
You want to mention that you have some free templates that everybody can access
Oh, yeah.
if they'd like to give it a try?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for reminding me on that. Yes, we do. So like, one of our philosophies at Forecaster is really just that, like, we want to help democratize financial modeling. You know what I mean? Like, we want to make financial modeling easier for everybody to do, less intimidating and that kind of thing. And so if you're in a position, right, to buy Forecaster, to use with us as a team, like, it's a phenomenal product. It's a phenomenal team. You'll love it. But a lot of folks aren't in that position. Like, a lot of folks are early, right? And maybe they're bootstrapped and they're funding the company themselves. I know what that's like. And so we do a lot for free as well. What Michael's talking about is we have some amazing financial model templates that we give away completely for free. All you got to do is just download them. They fit a lot of different business models. They'll take a little bit of work, like, right? You need to take the model. You need to make sure it's right for your business, but it really shortcuts the path towards getting a great financial model. And they're good. They're really good models. Like, they're not as good as Forecaster, but they're really good models, right? They're great spreadsheet models, and they can work really well for your company. So if you're kind of in an earlier stage and you want to use a spreadsheet for your model, I really do suggest that you download one of our templates. I think they're world class. So yeah, that's a great point, Michael. Thank you. All right. Well, last call for any questions here. But if we don't have any more questions, I'll give you 17 minutes back to your day, and I'll take a bathroom break, and yeah, we'll get it rocking. I really appreciate everybody's time and the questions and everything. I really hope this was valuable, and just wish you the best of luck in your entrepreneurial journey. See you guys.